Good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be here tonight as your MC and panel moderator. My name is Nick Dempsey, and I'm a senior here at Severian. I'm also a member of the Schola Cantorum Choir and president of both X-Men and the Tri-M Music Honor Society. And now, without further ado, please help me in welcoming to the stage Mr. Keith Lockhart. All right, everybody, please help me in welcoming our student panelists to the stage. Juniors Isaiah Green, Cooper Marino, and Joe Teven, freshmen Jeremy Broder and Luke Herman, and seventh grader Sebastian Candeno. For more than 3 decades, Mr. Lockhart has led one of the most beloved orchestras in the entire world. Many of us know him from the Boston Pops, the Holiday Pops concerts, national broadcasts, and major performances such as the Super Bowl. Tonight, we're excited to hear about his journey in music and what's led him to an orchestra on the world stage, and what lessons students can take away from him in the arts. We've collected nearly 200 questions from different students within our community. Mr. Lockhart, if I've done the math correctly, you have about 1.5 seconds to answer each of them. I'm just kidding. We've consolidated each of these questions into themes, and our panelists will have the opportunity to ask several questions. Mr. Lockhart, before we begin, just so you know, we anticipate spending between 1 to 3 minutes on each of them. Panelists, please introduce yourself before asking your first question. Let's start off with Jeremy Broder. Take it away, Jeremy.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Broder, and I'm a freshman here at Severian. I play the guitar, and I'm part of the theater program. Mr. Lockhart, what first inspired your love for music, and when did you realize it might become something you wanted to pursue seriously?
Jeremy, great question. Takes me back a whole lot of years. I would have to say that what first inspired my love of music was my parents, primarily my father, who was really the great music lover of my parents. He was one of those Depression-era kids who never had a chance to really study music because his parents couldn't simply afford to have that happen. But he loved music. He was always singing, always whistling, played the record player very well, played a little bit of trumpet, and a little bit of, do you guys know what a record player is? A little bit of trumpet, a little bit of accordion, a little bit of a lot of things, but mostly just loved having music on. It was always around him, and I think I grew up in many ways trying to emulate my father. But in terms of when did I think that this was a good way to go professionally, well, I'm still not quite sure. It's growing up as I did in a household that was, even though the music was heard all the time, it was definitely not an artistic household. My parents were both IBMers. My mother was a mathematician, my father was an engineer. I didn't have any real role models that said, you can do this, you can go beyond this, this can be what you do for a living. I mean, I thought it was something you did for fun. I still think that at some elemental level. And it wasn't, even when I went to finished high school, everything I did was surrounded by music. I mean, I sang and I played and I did the school shows and, all of those things. And then I thought I was going to school to eventually go on to law school, to hit my LSATs and go to law school. As you can see, it didn't work out that way, which is probably good for the legal profession. And it wasn't really until I was in my early 20s that I had enough mentors around me who did this at a level that I could look at them and say, maybe I could do that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Cooper, why don't we take a moment to build on that a little bit and talk about some of the people that helped guide him along the way.
Hi everyone, my name is Cooper Marino. I'm class of 27. I'm a junior here at Severian. I'm the music director of the X-Men a cappella group, and I've participated in theater throughout my years at Severian. Mr. Lockhart, to kind of expand on Jeremy's point, my question for you is, was there a teacher or a mentor or moment that helped guide you towards conducting?
You know, so many people, I wish I could say there was one person, one kind of burning bush moment that said, this is where you're going to put it. It was much more subtle than that. There was a lot of different people pushing on me, guiding me gently in different directions, which I suppose at the end is more of the time how it normally happens. I will say that, so here I was a junior in college. I was finishing a degree in piano performance. I was also finishing an undergraduate German degree and, you know, other liberal arts sorts of things. But I didn't really know what I was going to do with that. And honestly, I was a good pianist at that point, but the ground is littered with good pianists. And I really wanted to perform. I really wanted to be on stage. I know you can empathize with that. And my actually piano professor, who was a real, like a Van Cliburn competition finalist level pianist, came up to me one day and said, "Do you ever think about conducting?" And John Roberts, that was his name. I think what he was saying was that I seemed like the type who really liked thinking about and analyzing and tearing apart music more than I liked being in the practice room for another couple of hours. And I think he saw that I had something that needed to be expressed in a public sort of way, but the piano was not going to be the medium. As you know, I mean, you can call yourself an artist as much as you want, but if you don't have a medium that will take the ideas of fully formed ideas in your head and bring them out to the audience in a way that touches and reaches them, then that talent is wasted. And it's funny, as a pianist, I mean, I still play to some extent. I had horrible performance anxiety issues. I mean, really debilitating ones. The second that I started working as a conductor, and I'd messed around in high school. I conducted the school musicals. I just enjoyed, by the way, watching Chorus Line very much. But when one thing that made me know that I had come across the way that I could best express myself is that I could do, from the time I really should have been nervous as a young conductor to this day, it never occurs to me to be fazed by what's in front of me, to be nervous, to be apprehensive. And that's one way that I knew, you know, anticipatory, yes, but not scared to death, which is how I felt going out on stage to play a piano recital. And that's one way that I knew that I'd finally come up with my medium.
I think I speak for a lot of us on the panel when I say it's really interesting to hear how someone's life was shaped into the person they are today. Isaiah, how about we move from there and continue to talk about that journey that Mr. Lockhart's been on?
Hey, my name's Isaiah Green. I'm also a junior here at Xaverian. I play the drums in the Xaverian band. Mr. Lockhart, you went from studying music to eventually becoming the conductor of the Boston Pops. What was your journey like? And were there moments along the way where things didn't go as planned or felt especially challenging?
Is this one of those questions I was supposed to answer in under 2 seconds? The journey was great. Short as possible story from that. So there I am, 20 years old. My professor, the one who knew my musicianship probably better than anyone, said, "Do you ever think about conducting?" And I said, "Not seriously." I, at that point, kind of retooled myself. I went out to the Aspen Festival in Colorado, one of the prestigious summer classical music festivals, got into their conducting program, Lord knows how, had a kind of eye-opening summer, not so much because of the instruction, but just because of being in a big fish tank for the first time with a lot of people who were doing this at a very high level, and then just kind of put the blinders on and headed in that direction. After finishing a graduate degree in conducting, I assumed, of course, that the New York Philharmonic or the Boston Symphony would immediately call up and offer me a job. It didn't happen that way. And I have, at one point I had a file folder with 150 some odd rejection letters in it that I kept just to goad myself forward. But eventually, leaving out a lot of stuff in between, I taught college at the place I had done my graduate work for 6 years. And eventually, I got that one moment where the door opened just a crack. That was one of my conducting teachers at Aspen told me. He said, you know, everyone in this room is going to get that moment of opportunity. If you are not ready to walk through the door at the moment it opens, it may never open again, which was a little scary. But you spend all your time as a conducting student and as a young conductor looking for that break into the profession, getting ready for something you never know is going to happen. But you have to have the faith to continue to get ready for it anyway. And the opportunity did come. I was hired for something because of something else that I had been considered for that I was thought inappropriate for. I was thought to be too young to be the director of orchestras at a kind of a big university sort of thing. But people saw me do that. There was another job open and they said, remember that guy? Et cetera, et cetera. The person who hired me there, the manager of that orchestra, moved to a bigger orchestra the next year. And he said, you know who you haven't seen, who you need to see? You need to see this guy. So it was about a door opening, walking through the door, being ready to walk through the door, not messing up that opportunity, and then having another door open and another door open. And that tends to cascade. And the opposite, sadly, is also true. So basically, when the door opens, be ready to walk through.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Luke, let's take a step back for a moment. Why don't we talk about the role itself that Mr. Lockhart's in?
Hi, my name is Luke Herman. I'm a freshman and I play the alto saxophone in the band. My question is, for those of us who may not know much about conducting, what exactly does a conductor do? And what qualities make someone a good conductor?
It's a great question. You're right. I mean, almost everybody has seen a conductor, either live or on TV or in videos or movies, but it is a mysterious profession. Generally speaking, I find that the misconceptions about what a conductor does, they run the gamut from the idea that the conductor somehow has total mind control over every single person on the stage. And if I don't flick my finger in exactly the right way, that very talented artist sitting right there will be dumbfounded and not do anything. The opposite is that the conductor is just there for window dressing and to look good on TV. And if the conductor disappeared in a puff of smoke, the orchestra would sound exactly the same going on as it was. And the truth, like most truths, is somewhere in between those two things. Basically, especially, I think a good thing for a Zavarian, a lot of athletes here, a conducting job is a coaching role. It is a job where you take a lot of talented, but also sometimes headstrong and individualistic people and try to get them oriented to a common goal. As opposed to the goal of scoring a touchdown, this is the goal of playing with a consistent understanding of what the music is and what it's trying to communicate among all of those people at the same time. The cool thing about being a conductor is that unlike most coaching roles, or for instance, directing a play, where you work and you work and you work, and I feel very sadly for Mrs. O'Connor with this, you work and work and work and work, and then you have to sit there and watch other people do it. And the whole time you're like, oh, but the great thing about being a conductor is you're involved all the way through the performance, and there is, in a very, very central way. The basic part of conducting, the stuff you see moving hands around, is basically being a central point of information for a lot of people. Early orchestras, beginning of the 19th century, for instance, largely did not use conductors because they were small enough that just like a chamber group or like you might do in jazz ensemble, for instance, people listened to each other and they bounced off of each other's ideas. But you can't do that as orchestras grew into the larger concert halls of the 19th century. You can't do that with 100 people or 200 people or 300 people with a big choral work. You need some central point of information. Everybody goes, yeah, that's where the beat is. That's where we're coming in. Also, if you've ever done a rehearsal without a conductor, you know that they generally are free-form democratic sort of things where people argue things out. If you had that with 100 people, we'd never get anything done. Eventually, there has to be some sort of vaguely authoritarian person who says, I've listened to all of you, we're going to do it this way.
You know, I think, at least for myself, I've obviously seen Dr. Bob and Mr. Kidd conduct, and I've seen them with their little wands, kind of like magicians up there. But I think that gave me some really important insight into what the job actually is. Joe, why don't we take a step back for a moment and actually talk about what it's like stepping onto the stage?
Hi everyone, my name is Joe Teven. I'm a junior. I'm part of the stage crew for Zavarian's theater program, and I play saxophone in the band. Now you actually already answered my question about the stage. It was a little bit about stage fright, and you said you feel confident up there except when you're playing piano. But my next question is,
Just to interrupt for a second, the funny thing about that is that has largely gone away because now when I'm playing piano, I'm doing so because I want to, as opposed to feeling that I have to. It's amazing when you do something that feels like it's not being forced. You know, when you're doing curriculum and then you have to do recitals to get degrees and all that, the pressure is enormous. But when I can let go of that and say, this is where I want to be, then it gets a lot easier. But anyway, go on with the question.
Totally. I have a feeling a faculty member might have submitted this one, but your career involves travel, long hours, and big performances. How have you balanced that with your family life?
You expect me to answer that with my wife sitting there?
Yes.
Honey, would you like to come up and... I spent a good portion of my career not really having a family life. It's really only been in these last couple of decades that I've had that blessing in my life. The honest answer is that you really have to have an amazing partner to make that work. And I'm lucky to be able to check that one off with a... And yes, I mean, I am certainly less all over the map than I was even a decade ago, because eventually you start learning that your life needs balance. And part of what the balance is the balance between the great satisfaction I have in my career and my professional life, and the balance and the incredible, more than satisfaction I have at the joy of having a family and two great kids at home, whom I suspect you probably know. That was for you guys, so you wouldn't throw the tomatoes. They're back there somewhere. And a wonderful wife and a community of love. And I'd say what I could say further than thank you to Emily and to my kids for understanding is that I try to be there when I'm there. There's people say, well, you're gone, 2 weeks out of a month, and I say, yes, but some people are gone pretty much 6 days out of 7 in terms of their attention to their family. They're not ever leaving the town. So what the great thing about my job is it's an on and off kind of job. So I get to actually be home to see the kids come home and things like that, and be with them and take them to games and that sort of thing, in a way that I might not if I had a more traditional job. But it does involve more absence and more emails and phone time.
I think that's some really great advice for myself and the rest of the students in the room. Mr. Lockhart, we now have a question from our youngest panelist in the room, Sebastian.
Hi, Mr. Lockhart. My name is Sebastian Cadena. I'm a 7th grader at Severian, and I play the flute in the FXD band. I was wondering, do you still get nervous before a performance, and what do you do to overcome it?
Well, you know, there are lots of, I think anybody who tells you they don't get nervous before a performance either isn't invested enough in the performance, because some part of you should be nervous because you should really, really want to do well, and you should really, really want to satisfy the needs of the composer, the needs of the audience. That's what being a performer is about. But there are many different ways that nerves manifest themselves, and some of them are performance enhancing, and some of them are performance inhibiting. And so, yes, I still get nervous. I mean, you know, it's hard to say when you do the 4th of July concert, you're going to walk out on a stage in front of 400,000 people in the live crowd and a couple million on TV. It's hard to say, yeah, you know, it's kind of like going to the grocery store. No, it's nothing at all like going to the grocery store. But my nerves, and that, again, this is why I said that that kind of is what led me to thinking that I had hit upon a possible profession that I could actually do well, is that my nerves tend to be more along the lines of, what do I have to remember? What do I have to do? They tend to be more along the lines of anticipation than they do about, oh, I hope I don't, you know. It's partly training yourself. It's partly knowing with confidence that you can do what has to be done. I mean, there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Arrogance is thinking that you can do what has to be done without really the skill set to back it up. Confidence is knowing that you have the tools necessary to get through that particular challenge. And the only way one gains that kind of confidence is by working hard enough that you have pre-anticipated most of the problems that are going to spring up before they spring up.
If I'm being honest, I'm pretty terrified right now in front of about 200 of you. So I have no
You're
idea.
doing great.
So I have no idea how you do it in front of millions. I think now would be a great time to look at your career overall, Mr. Lockhart. Jeremy, let's dive right in.
Mr. Lockhart, what has been one of the most surreal or unexpected moments in your career where you thought, I can't believe this is part of my job?
Oh, wow. There have been a number of them, actually. I would say one doesn't go into classical music because one is looking for the big spotlight, because as you know, most of us fly under the radar. Most of our jobs are, you know, even very satisfying high-level professional performance jobs they're not household names. So some of the interactions that I've had with, oh my gosh, kind of people are some of those moments, I suppose. In February 2002, when the Patriots started the dynasty, we were on the field to do the pre-show in the New Orleans Superdome, and I found myself afterwards, you know, sitting between Bono and Paul McCartney. That was pretty cool. And then the NFL led me to a box where I was seated next to Joe Namath, who you might not know who that was, but there's on one side and Patti LaBelle on the other, and Trisha Yearwood, they're all in the same box. It was the weirdest group of people that I just, you know, football makes strange bedfellows. Having Steve Tyler jump up on the podium in the middle of Walk This Way, screaming it in my ear, and then grabbing me around both of us going, walk this way. That was that kind of way too. There are more, but you know, those are just the fun. Those are the fun parts of at least a job where I'm at least connected to celebrity a lot. the coolest things are the things that made the most profound impact are the getting to meet your real heroes, people who are the word genius is overused, but people who truly are creative geniuses. Spending the first time I got to spend a couple of hours with Stephen Sondheim, sitting slightly closer than we are now, talking to him. And, occasionally I would step outside of myself and go watch this conversation, and I'm like, dude, you're talking to Stephen Sondheim. And, the other surreal moments are the moments where you realize how much impact the organizations you work with have on other people's lives. And they range from, people coming up to you and saying, the Boston Pops, I listened to a study diet of the Boston Pops while my mother was lying in her bed in hospice with cancer, and how much it made to her, and how much of a comfort it was to her, and how much of a comfort it was to the family. Little things, little not in terms of not being important, but little things like being intimate moments like that. And then just the ideas that there are certain things that we do together, whether it's, concerts of, honoring the dead in the marathon bombing, things like that, where you realize that you get to be central to an organization that brings a lot of love and a lot of healing into the world. And, how could I be any luckier?
I think, as you mentioned, Mr. Lockhart, you've been part of so many incredible experiences over the years. But Cooper, why don't we take a moment to focus a little bit closer on his time at the Boston Pops?
So Jeremy kind of answered my my question, but I do want to elaborate on, Mr. Lockhart, you've worked with so many incredible composers over your time as conductor of the Boston Pops. But what was it like collaborating with some of those people like John Williams or?
Well, that's another one of the true living geniuses on the planet whom I actually have had a working relationship and not just a fanboy relationship with over the years. In my time, in the 30 years with the Pops, I have worked with, they did the figures at some point, something like 300 different guest artists, some of whom are no longer with us, who are legendary, some of whom are upcoming modern legends. I've also worked a lot with that guy right over there, whose name is Rich Kelly, who's a trumpet player and a wonderful and incredibly important member of the Boston Pops. I just thought I'd give him a shout out. First thing I said to Rich when I saw him tonight was, "What, you don't have a gig on a Tuesday night?" I was like, because I would never want to stop people from working. It's actually fascinating to be able to see how the minds of people like John Williams work up close. And in a way, so much easier to work with somebody of John's caliber than it is to work with people of perhaps a lesser caliber of accomplishment than John. Because when you work with somebody who's that good, they know exactly what they want. And my job is to give a composer or a soloist, if I'm accompanying a concerto, exactly what they want. My job is to be a collaborator. And I sort of said that more when I was talking about what conductors do anyway. Our job is to be the connective tissue, is to connect the intent of the composer, symbolized by the little black dots on the page, with the performance of the orchestra, to be, if you will, the advocate for the composer to the players of the orchestra, to convince them that you have a valid interpretation of what's going on. Also to be the connective tissue between the performance, the performers on the stage, and the audience, to involve them and make them feel like they are actually part, which they are, of music being made, because music made in a vacuum really means nothing. And to work with a great, to work with a Yo-Yo Ma or, a Josh Bell or some great, amazing soloist like that, or a Broadway performer like Audrey McDonald or Brian Stokes Mitchell, or pretty much name. A lot of Broadway comes through the Boston Pop stage, or a great opera singer. Any of those people are they know exactly what they want to be doing, and they are dreams to work with. The same thing's true with composers like John. There's the people who are more challenging to work with are young composers who are still finding their voice, but even more importantly than finding their voice, finding the language to put their voice out there. And the language is often flawed, which means that you're studying this thing, especially when you're doing a premiere, you're looking at music that you are only hearing in your head. I mean, I'll go play a chord or two on piano, but basically that doesn't give you, especially in a big, thick, modern score, it doesn't give you much idea of what's going on. You look at that and go, what do they want this to sound like? And you go up to a young composer and you say, what are you trying to get at here? What is this supposed to be? And I imagine that's similar to, because I know you have a lot of roots in the theater. It's similar to a director of a play coming to a young playwright and say, what does this scene mean? Who is supposed to come out on top? Who are we supposed to be rooting for in this? And have the playwright go, I don't know, what do you think? There's nothing worse than that. Somebody like John, I come to and I say, what are you saying here? And he goes, this. And I go, okay, we can give you that. So yeah, it actually, in a weird way, it may get more like, it may make you a little bit more nervous dealing with that greatness, but greatness is a lot easier to work with than mediocrity.
Those are all such incredible connections you've made over the years. John Williams basically wrote the soundtrack to my childhood. Star Wars, Harry Potter, Indiana Jones. One of my favorite memories from recent years was watching you and the Boston Pops perform the Harry Potter score in Tanglewood. That was such a profound experience for me because it kind of really connected what you do for a living with something that's really important and personal to me. Isaiah, moving on from that, why don't we take a minute to talk about the music itself that Mr. Lockhart has worked on?
Mr. Lockhart, I would just like to ask, what's your favorite piece of music to conduct and why?
You wouldn't believe how hard a question that is. I mean, it's kind of like, what's your favorite food? Name one. Well, it's not, for some people, a good steak, a lobster, whatever, but no, it's more complicated than that. There was a great conductor who was many years music director of the Cleveland Orchestra, world-renowned orchestra, named George Zell, whose answer to a reporter who asked that was, whatever I'm working on this week. And there is some truth to that, because to be an appropriate advocate for a work of art, to recreate the art of musical performance is a recreative art. And obviously, it's sometimes branching over into a creative art, which is where jazz lives, between being a recreative art and a creative art, because if somebody's stepping out and taking a solo, they're creating something new that hasn't been heard before, but it's based on something that has been heard for years and been played by thousands of people, thousands of times. But in this recreative art, you really have to be passionate for what you are doing with the orchestra at that point. And that's, I think, true for any leader. The first thing you have to model is a passion for what it is that you are doing and you want the players to do. But being a little less this level in that answer, I love big 19th century romantic orchestral music. I don't mean romantic like Valentine's Day, but I mean romantic like the era. Music of Gustav Mahler and Richard Strauss, because those things use the orchestra so well, and they're such incredible statements, so much bigger than any of us can make individually, that they're a whole lot of fun to put together. In terms, I wouldn't vote against Gershwin ever, because I think somebody who could, talking about somebody who is kind of the American talent, kid of immigrants, died at 38. One can only imagine what if his lifespan had been the normal kind of double that, what could have happened. Amazing improvisatory musician, but also a person who left for us perhaps, the Great American Piano Concerto, the Great American Tone Poem, the Great American Opera, perhaps, in Porgy and Bess. So basically, I'm kind of a musical omnivore. I really love it all, and I think that's probably why the Boston Pops ended up being where I hung my hat all these years. Sorry for the long answer.
No, I think that's a great mentality when it comes to picking that question. I think, Luke, I would like to talk about, what do you think about some students who are still trying to discover their own passions, like you, me, and maybe some of the other people on this stage? Why don't we discuss that a little bit more now?
They definitely are, Nick. That leads me to my next question for you, Mr. Lockhart. What advice would you give a high school student who wants to pursue something they truly care about?
Good luck. No, it is, we can all pursue things that we're passionate about, that we really care about, that mean the world to us, that drive our existence. And sometimes you can be fortunate enough to pursue those things and actually have people compensate you for doing that. And that is the true blessing of being a performing artist, is that I have this, and you have to remember that it's a blessing, because anything you do for a living for long enough will eventually at some point feel like a job. And as opposed to differentiating between a job and your work. But to remember that I have the great blessing of making a living, doing something that I would gladly do if I didn't have to make a living, is something that one reminds oneself when one is dragging themselves to the bus to go to the next tour stop. I would say it's my advice to a high school student thinking that way is not that, you should aim yourself in a laser focus from where you are right now to some goal that's all the way over on the other side of that field. I think too many people lose the context of the journey because they're too focused on the goal. It's important that you use this time, and even the years after this when you move on to college, to really understand yourself and understand what motivates you, understand what you're passionate about, and understand what you're good at. And those things don't necessarily come easy. And it's the mentality that what I would call a trade school mentality, that you come straight out of high school and you know exactly what you're going to be when you grow up and you go do that, doesn't give you the time to grow and take advantage of the opportunities. And of course, it's easy to say that because your parents will say, "Well, you got 4 years, and we're going to stop paying for you," or they'll say, "Or you got student loans, piling up." There's lots of practical issues in this, but do spend time actively thinking about where what you're doing now is going to take you. And when things strike you, I had no idea when I was 16 or 17 or 18 or 19 that I was going to be a conductor, let alone the conductor that I turned out to be. If there's something that intrigues you, use this time to explore, to find mentors, to find people who you can look at and say, "Wow, and most of them will be really ready to talk to you about it, and will talk to you about what the specific requirements are, the things you need to work on, and will also talk to you about what the possibilities are and what at least their path is. Nobody can define paths for you because everyone is as individual as the person who makes it. But yeah, the first thing is don't forget to keep exploring, and don't necessarily assume because you hit upon something you thought you might like to be when you're 15 years old that that the person you are at 20 is going to be anything like the person you were at 15.
That's a lot of really great advice. Joe, next question's yours.
If you could go back in time, what message would you give to your younger self?
Some of them I can't repeat here. If I could go back in time, the message I would give my younger self is, relax, it's going to be okay. And I'll be specific. In my first couple of years here in Boston, I went from being the associate conductor of the Cincinnati Symphony and the Cincinnati Pops Orchestras and music director of a small professional chamber orchestra to having a photo shoot for People magazine up on top of the Four Seasons building. That was a crushing amount of change. It's not like, it's not being falsely modest here. Conductors are always rather visible, need to be able to talk well, or a lot at any rate. You're always a spokesperson for your organization, but the change in level of scrutiny was crushing. And how I responded to that was by becoming incredibly concerned about every single small detail of the music. And basically never relaxing, never letting things happen, always being basically wound 2 or 3 notches too tight. And eventually, with a little bit of age, and you realize that the sky doesn't fall every time there's a crack. And you also realize that you're working at counter purposes when you're working with people. If you are making everybody always in mortal fear of messing up, you have to learn to be a little easier on yourself and on the people around you. And so I suppose that's the first thing, at least that's the first printable thing I would tell myself.
Mr. Lockhart, Sebastian has a fun question for you next.
Mr. Lockhart, if you hadn't become a conductor, what career do you think you might have pursued?
Well, from a practical point of view, I probably would have gone to law school, but I married a lawyer, so that was the next best thing. From a what I really love and care about point of view, I would love to have to be on my 5th or 6th novel by this point. I would love to write. For me, words have an intensity and a beauty that it's just as resonant to me as music is, honestly. And I've always admired great authors, perhaps even more than I admire great composers. And so I always wish that I could do that, but honestly, I thought about during the COVID when everything was shut down, when everybody was, I thought that was the time I was going to sit down and start doing it. It didn't happen. I may just be too lazy to be a successful author.
All right, we're gonna have some fun now with a few rapid fire questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind, no pressure. Are you ready, Mr. Lockhart?
Sure.
Favorite classical composer?
Mahler.
Favorite movie score?
E.T.
Hardest piece you've ever conducted?
If I say a piece that nobody in the room will know, is that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. A huge piece by the French 20th century composer Messiaen.
I might have heard of that one.
Dr. Bob has some lovely recordings he could lay on.
What's the hardest instrument to play in the orchestra?
Oboe.
What's your favorite Boston Pops tradition?
Dropping the flag during the Stars and Stripes Forever.
Favorite place you've ever performed in the world?
Oh, wow. Okay, favorite 5 places?
Sure.
The Philharmonie in Berlin, the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam, Carnegie Hall, Boston Symphony Hall, and the Louisiana Superdome, which wasn't quite as good acoustically as the other places.
Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
One of those people I mentioned earlier, probably. Or maybe Clinton? Bill Clinton?
How about the Queen?
Oh, the Queen. Thank you. This will allow me to expand this. And now you know why she's here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, when in other things that we haven't had a chance to talk about, so I'll just talk a little briefly. During this time that I have been, these 31 years now that I've been with the Boston Pops, I've had the great honor of having other title jobs with other orchestras, mostly to keep my hand in on the more traditionally classical side of the music business. I was music director for 11 years of the Utah Symphony in Salt Lake. This, from the late 90s into basically through the first decade of the 21st century. During that time, we hosted the Winter Olympics, and that was pretty cool to be playing the opening ceremonies of the Winter Olympics. Then after that, I was music director of the principal conductor of the BBC Concert Orchestra based in London. And as such, I was the conductor of record for the concert celebrating the Diamond Jubilee of the Queen on the Buckingham Palace grounds in 2012. The Queen was in attendance, as was Prince Charles, and up on the stage with me were Stevie Wonder, Paul McCartney, Elton John, Grace Jones, the list was, so Andrew Lloyd Webber, the list was just went on and on. But the Queen came backstage afterwards, and Prince Charles escorted her, and they had only one small area that they deemed secure enough to be able to do a receiving line, but she wanted to meet all the performers. And there were like 200 performers in this concert because there were like 100-person young people's choruses from inner city London and that sort of thing. So we're crammed into this tiny space, literally in a receiving line like this. And I have Grace Jones, who's about 6'5", like this, on one side of me, and Andrew Lloyd Webber on the other side like this. And the Queen comes by and goes, Prince Charles says, "Oh, we stole you from Boston for this, did we?" Which means at least that the prince, now the king, did his homework. And Queen Elizabeth, I think she just kind of nodded at me. But then we went to a great party at Buckingham Palace, and Emily was there too, and she got a kiss from Elton John. So.
What's your favorite part of being a Severian parent?
The incredible knowledge I have of I-95 between Newton and here. No, I'd say, both of us, I think, and I think I speak for Emily when I say this, our favorite part of the Xaverian experience is what our kids are receiving at Xaverian and their response to it. Our favorite part of the Xaverian experience is that both of our sons have had a really wonderful and fulfilling time here. And that's what makes any parent feel that they made a good decision with their kids' futures.
Got a great pivot now. Favorite food?
Sushi.
Favorite Boston sports team?
Oh, that's going to get me in trouble with the other ones. I have to say, I mean, I was a frustrated baseball player myself, so I have to say probably Red Sox, and with the Patriots following shortly behind.
Red Sox are definitely the right answer. What's your favorite holiday song?
The Christmas song by Mel Torme, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. My commercial debut was with Mel Torme singing the Christmas song with me for a recording project, and it was the first time since he recorded the original in the 50s, it was the first time he'd ever recorded the song, so that was kind of fun.
What's your most listened to artist on Spotify?
You're assuming I have a Spotify account.
I am, yes.
Emily, who's my favorite? Here's the funny thing. I don't listen to much music outside of work because it kind of feels, I said this to somebody once and they thought about that for a while and they said, yeah, I bet PGA golfers don't play golf on their weekends. It's like, I need to clear my brain. So honestly, I listen to a lot of things on YouTube and Spotify, but it's mostly because somebody says, you need to check this artist out because of possible collaboration with the Pops.
That's interesting. This is a really tough one now. Hot dog, a sandwich or not?
It's even worse when I didn't hear the question.
Hot dog,
Really?
a sandwich or not?
A standing witch or not?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? Yes or no?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? Yes or no? A hot dog is a hot dog. What's wrong with you?
That last one was a hard-hitting question.
You guys are,
Recently.
this is really, kind of gotcha journalism here.
We had to throw it in there though. Before we close out the program for the night, can you please tell us why you think music has such a powerful ability to bring people and communities together?
Such a great question, such a great way to end the evening. And especially these days when we seem to have so many examples of people feeling more fragmented and distanced from each other than perhaps at any point, certainly in my lifetime. Music is a gift. It's a gift from God that can cut straight to the emotional core of each of us. It touches us each, albeit in different ways, because it reaches us through our own individual receptors. Without the benefit or burden of language that one needs to understand, that's the idea that music is a universal language, that music can affect people emotionally deeply who don't speak the same language. It really is a bridge. And it cuts straight to the heart of what we feel inside is important. It also is a great chance to engage in community, something that has been more of a challenge for our society, I think, in these last few years with the proliferation of more online ways of gaining entertainment. The most important thing, perhaps, about doing a concert may not be actually performing the concert. It may be that you gather people in community to all experience that concert in their own way. Once music becomes a totally online, distanced, sterilized thing, that'll be time for me to retire, because for me, it's pointless ultimately if it is not reaching people whom I can actually see. And, embrace it. Embrace it as a listener, embrace it as a performer, embrace it as a way, as a prayer, and embrace it as the language that we're lucky to all be able to share.
thank you for sharing your time and story with us tonight. On behalf of the students, families, and the entire Severian community, we're incredibly grateful that you're here this evening. Everyone, please join me in giving Mr. Keith Lockhart one final round of applause.